If you're tuning into this episode today, it's a special one, episode 100, and we're doing something a little different. I'm taking you back through some of the top podcast episodes that you might have missed that were super impactful for me and some of the other listeners. So you might want to go back and check those out, but I'm going to be breaking each one down and how I was feeling and what I want you to have as a takeaway from those episodes. Let's get into it. Hey, welcome to the Money Markets and Mindset podcast. I'm your host, stock market coach and option trader, Jason Brown. And we got a special episode this time. We are here with episode 100. Wow, 100 podcast episodes. And we wanted to do something a little bit different for this episode. So what I thought we would do is take a look back at some of our podcast episodes that have meant the most over this journey, that may be deep in the archives, that if you're brand new to the channel or to the podcast, you haven't maybe heard these episodes before, but they were super impactful, either A, for me telling the story, or B, some of our listeners gave us so much good feedback on those episodes. So let's kick it off in no particular order, but I am going to start with this one, and I'm going to say it's the number one podcast episode, and that is episode number 46, which is called They Counted Me Out. Episode 46, They Counted Me Out. I was really just, breaking down how throughout different stages of my life, from being a child to being a teenager to a young adult, that different people at different stages in my life counted me out. And maybe you've been through something like that before, where just, a friend, a family member, a stranger was just talking. They weren't breathing life into you. They were either talking negative, they were not believing in your ability, or maybe you tried something and you quote unquote failed at it. But we all know that failure isn't really failure. It's an opportunity to learn something and try again smarter. But people don't always see it that way. And so let's take a listen to this portion of the episode, because I remember when I was a young child, that's when it first recognized that it started, that people were counting me out. Started with my teacher. So let's just take a listen to that episode. I talk about how they wanted to put me on drugs and everything, just because I was a little bit different. So let's take a listen to that now. I remember being in school, and I remember getting in trouble, and quote unquote trouble. And I was getting in trouble so much that the teachers call my mother up to the school, and they basically, the long story short, is they wanted to put me on like Ritalin or something. I just call it drugs. I'm like, these people wanted to give me drugs. And the reason was, they were just saying that I'm so hyper. I don't pay attention. I like talking. And, I think because I wasn't a person that could sit still and get lectured at. I'm still that way to this day. Like I don't do well in classrooms, in a corporate environment. I don't do well on conference calls or sitting through like a long lecture of just somebody talking to me. I've always been that way. But I look at what they or society, the teachers said was a negative, and I look at how it helps me today, because I like analyzing a bunch of different information in the stock market. I like looking at charts. I like finding what's moving, what's shaking. So it's funny. I like talking into a microphone. I like talking to a camera when nobody's around, right? When I make YouTube videos, there's nobody staring back at you, communicating with you. I'm talking to the camera. And because I like to talk, I like to express my feelings, I like to share, I just find it really funny that what was a negative, or at least what they told me was a negative, and that I need drugs for, and that I need to, change for, actually became one of the things that really helps me out in life. It became my profession to talk more often on the microphone, to talk in front of a camera, to act out, to be animated, so to speak, on video, or just in life, and be analytical and love things that's moving and shaking, and not necessarily interested in things that are boring or stale or typical, or the status quo. All right. So yeah, we shared in that episode how just by being different, how it starts at such a young age and how we're programmed to quote unquote follow the system. And the moment you do something different, they want to label it as bad. They want to put you in the box. They want to put you on drugs. They want to put you back inside, coloring inside the lines, stay in your seat, raise your hand, ask for permission. And I never really realized until I looked back on things how at a young age they start trying to program us or perhaps teach us that going a different route or being different is actually bad. It's not until you get older and get to know yourself that you realize that it can actually be a good thing. And we should encourage kids and people to follow their dreams. But more importantly, I think if you're listening to this and you're maybe not on the receiving side, but maybe you have had a friend come to you with a business idea, had a friend want to get involved in the stock market, want to try something. I want you to think, have you ever counted somebody out and maybe you didn't do it on purpose, but you think back and think, man, maybe I should have been a little bit more encouraging. Maybe I should have been a little bit more supportive of my friend. Maybe I should have tried to pick them up when they fail instead of kick them while they're down and say, why did you do that? Or why did you try that? So that episode is super personal to me. So take a listen to the rest of the episode. I also talk about when I lost all my money, had to go back to work, which was a super humbling experience. And man, there was a young lady that spoke life into me, and I don't even know if she knew that's what she was doing, but her words, it just lit a fire inside of me to keep going and to remember that when I lost all my money, had to go back to work, she just reminded me that I won't be here long. I won't be down for long. All right. So in episode 31, I talked about fear, and fear is a very funny and interesting thing because most people don't take action because they let fear paralyze them. They let fear stop them in their tracks. But when you think about fear, I once heard this acronym, and maybe you've heard it before, that fear is false evidence appearing real. I'll say that again. Fear, the acronym stands for false evidence appearing real. And what's interesting about fear and why that's such a good acronym for it is that what we fear is something that either A, has not happened, and B, may never happen. Okay. And so that's where it becomes false evidence, because we say, if we ever start investing in the stock market, we start thinking about what if I lose all my money, or we think about what would happen if this doesn't work out. And in that episode, we talked about the fact that you're already living failure. In fact, let's take a listen to that clip right now. You should ask yourself this question. If you lost all your money right now, what would you do the next day? I just want you to pause and think about that. If you lost all your money right now, what would you do the next day? I can tell you what I would do. I would go get a job. Now, if you already have a job, chances are if you lost every dime or dollar that you have today, chances are you're going to go to work tomorrow. And when you think about it, you're already going to work. So what I'm saying is you're already living failure. Does that make sense? Like if I fail, I'm just going to go to work tomorrow and then wait for 2 weeks to get a paycheck and start the process all over again. So in episode 31, you can hear where we're going with this episode, which is super powerful. So I encourage you to go back, take a listen to episode 31, and think about fear. Like, what is it really? Because when you think about being scared to get in the stock market, being scared to take risks, being scared to place a trade because you might lose all your money or you don't know what you're doing, most people don't realize that we're already living fear. We are already living what would happen if we don't do this. So for the most part, for me, that allowed me to get excited about, well, what if I do this? What are the possibilities? What could happen for my life? What could change? I could never have to worry about money again. I could teach this strategy, these skills to my kids. Like, I just started focusing on the upside because we were already living failure. We were already broke. We already didn't drive the car we want to drive. We already didn't live in the house that we wanted to live in. And so when we get scared of like, what's going to happen if I lose all my money? or what's going to happen if this doesn't work out, that's the false evidence, because there's no proof that it won't work out. But you already know what's going to happen if it doesn't work out, because you're already living that life right now. You're working your job. You're just barely getting by, whatever the case may be. So when you really break it down and think about it, you have way more to gain than you do to lose. And that was the epiphany or the awakening that I needed to push through any fear of learning something new, investing in the stock market, or even if a few trades or something don't go my way in a row. And I start thinking like, man, maybe not investing's not for me. I think, well, number one, you've made money before, so you know that it works. You know the power of it. And number two, you already live in failure. If you stop right now, then this is most likely as good as it gets. But if you keep going, it can get greater later. So I encourage you to go back, take a listen to that episode, and really think about the things that you are fearful of, that you are afraid of, and put those things in check. Walk through the exercise that we talk about in that episode. And then let me know if you came out on the other side fearless, or at least a little less fearful enough to move forward and take the calculated risk. So let's talk about episode number 32, which is the consumer mindset versus the investor mindset. And this podcast episode was very interesting to me, or very enlightening to me, because I remember once I learned the difference in most people's lives and getting to where you want to be is based on primarily how you think. And so if you want to be an investor, then you have to think like an investor. And if you're going to be a consumer, then you have to understand how a consumer thinks. Or if you want to not be a consumer, you have to understand how a consumer thinks, so you can start to identify and like ask yourself, am I thinking like a consumer, which is going to have me spending money, which is going to have me stuck and being purchasing, depreciating things? Or am I going to be an investor or think like an investor, so I could be on the other side of receiving some type of profits from the things that people purchase? Let's take a listen to that episode. The consumer wants to know, can I afford it, or they're worried about this is all I have. Whereas the investor is thinking, I can't afford not to invest, because if I don't do something different, then I'm going to get the same result. So two different total mindsets there. Nobody can make any guarantees in this world, especially not in the stock market. But the consumer mindset wants a guarantee, because they want to know, what if it doesn't work? On the investor side, the investor mindset says, how do I make it work for me? Right? That's what the investor's thinking. They're not thinking about the negative outcome of the situation. They already realize that that's a fact of life, that things don't work out. Yes, that episode, that clip is so good. I want to encourage you to listen to the full episode, because as you start to identify how consumers think versus how investors think, it's two totally different mindsets. Consumers say, can I afford it? Investors think, how can I afford it? Or I cannot afford to not do it, right? That's like a double negative, but you're like, how can I not do this? And then consumers think, will it work for me? And then the investor mindset is like, how do I make it work for me? And that's such a powerful way to think, because if we all are human, we all breathe air, we all bleed the same red blood, then you start to realize that there's nothing special about someone that makes something work for them or not. It's more about they have some information, some training that you don't. And so if you can get that same information, if you can get that same training, then guess what? You can most likely get a similar result. Now, notice I didn't say the same result, because there's different things at play. There's different things at play, like the time that person invested could have been in a bull market or a bear market. The amount of money that person started with could have been different. Maybe they grew up in a family where they were being taught financial literacy from a young age. And so there's other things at play that you don't technically see that could contribute to someone's success. But the key is, if you can learn what they learn, think how they think, and execute, you will get some version, your version of that success, if you can think like the investor and not like the consumer, and then take the actions to execute which is overcoming your fear, like we talked about in episode 31, which will help you move forward, spring to action, and start to become the person that you want to be, instead of being stuck in a person that is scared to move forward. So episode 9, which was one of our earlier episodes, I really talked about the skills that you need to be successful in the stock market. And it's funny that most people want to invest. They want to be a trader or they want to be an investor, whether long-term or short-term, but they never stop and think, most people never stop and think, what skills am I going to need to be successful? Like if you want to be a doctor or if you want to be a lawyer, you stop and think and you say, okay, what skills am I going to need? I'm going to need to go to school. I'm going to need to learn law. I'm going to need to learn how to debate. If you want to be a doctor, like I'm going to need to learn anatomy or, the body. I'm going to need to learn about diseases, blood. I'm going to need to do a fellowship of other people. Those are the skills that I'm going to need to learn. And then even a doctor understands that they won't be able to save every single patient, which is what I talk about in this episode, that, even though you learn the skills, you might lose money. So let's take a listen to that right now. So you need to be able to calculate risk reward ratios. And notice I didn't say, when I talked about, how much are you planning to gain from it? Notice I didn't say, what are you hoping to gain from it? We don't do hope in this industry. If you mastered reading charts and applying probability and statistics, you should have a solid plan for your trade with a well-defined risk reward ratio. You should never hope you make a certain dollar amount. You should never think you're going to make a certain dollar amount. You should be able to say, based on the chart, here's where the stock should go. Here's where I'm planning on it to go. And if it goes there, this is what the dollar amount will be that I make. If it does not go to that point, here is how much I will lose. And here's the key. I am okay with losing that money. So in that episode, what I think is so important, like I said, the doctor understands that, and the nurse, that they may not be able to save every single patient, but they go into surgery. They go into treating their patients with a game plan. The lawyer understands that they might not win every case, but they go into it prepared. They go into it with the necessary skills and they give it their best shot. And more importantly, if the lawyer doesn't win every case, and if the nurse and doctor doesn't save every person, which they know that they can't, that's out of their hands, they don't just say, you know what, I'm not a good nurse. I'm not a good doctor. I'm just going to punch out and find a new profession today. No, they understand that it's part of the industry. I don't want to say part of the game, because being a doctor or nurse is not a game, but they understand somebody's going to come in there at a certain age and we're not going to be able to revive them. Someone's going to come in there with a certain wound or a certain injury. And unfortunately, they're going to succumb to those wounds or injuries. And it's the same thing in the stock market. You understand that you could do everything right and you can still lose money. But the question is, are you prepared? And do you have the skills going into it so that you know what's required of you to become successful? And more importantly, when you lose money, you know how to lose money small, and you know how to not take it personal and not make this big declaration about who you are as a person, saying like, well, I guess I'm no good at this, or this isn't for me. So take a listen to that episode number 9, the skills you need to be successful. All right, so let's talk about episode number 54, where we talk about limiting beliefs. And limiting beliefs can sometimes show up in a disguise as excuses. And these excuses can seem very, very valid for keeping you from moving forward with investing, from keeping you moving forward from pursuing your dreams and your goals. And that's the scary part, is that you don't realize it's a belief. You think it might be a valid excuse, but really it's a limiting belief that you are transferring over into that excuse to keep you from moving forward. Let's take a listen to that episode. That sometimes in life, everything's not going to line up correctly. Everything's not going to be perfect, because when I read some of these comments, you'll probably identify with someone, but everyone wants the right time. Once my kids are older, I'll do this. Once I make more money, I'll start investing. And you have all these limiting beliefs. Even me, I can't pull off this challenge unless we have a babysitter. But it's not until you draw a line in the sand that says, hey, it won't be perfect. It might be a little ugly. It might be a little fussy. It might be a little less professional. It might not be exactly how I wanted it to look, but all I know is I'm going through with this thing no matter what. This is happening this week. So in that episode, I remember I was doing a live challenge either inside the Facebook group or on YouTube or something like that. And I remember I think that the babysitter called off or the nanny called off, and it was just hectic. I wasn't as prepared as I wanted to be. And I was ready to delay doing the challenge, delay moving forward. And I think about this in many other areas of my life where I fell back on the excuse that it's not the right time. It's not perfect. Maybe if we give it another week, we'll be able to do it. And the reality is the limiting belief was that any of that's like having your kid walk into the room while you're live streaming, that's not a reason to stop from trying to move forward and change people's lives and teach them this financial literacy. Not having enough time. I guarantee you, if you follow someone around for a 24-hour day, you can say, oh, so you watch TV for about 2 hours right there. Or you're driving in your car. Instead of listening to music, why don't you listen to the course or listen to an audio book and start learning something? We used to call that university on wheels. You'll start to realize we do have time. We all have 24 hours in a day, but how are we using that time? But it's usually not time that's the excuse. It's your limiting belief that is keeping you from maximizing the potential opportunity that you have, or also allowing you to sit in your fear and not allow you to take action because you think what you have is a valid excuse. But once you shatter those limiting beliefs that you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you're not smart enough, whatever they may be, you start to realize that what you have is enough to at least start with, because we all started from somewhere. None of us just woke up and came out the womb with $100,000. And even if we came out the womb with an inheritance of money or from a wealthy family, even though that money was there, you could not just give that kid the knowledge. That kid still had to understand the English language, understand words, understand reading charts with respect to the stock market, and understand how to move and manage that money and invest it and build their empire. And so we all started from zero. We all started from day one. And your limiting beliefs will have you believe that that's a valid excuse for you not moving forward, not having time, not having this, not having that. So make sure you take a listen to episode 54 on limiting beliefs. So episode 59, we talked about generational wealth, and generational wealth is such a interesting and powerful word and topic to discuss, because some people say it I want generational wealth from my family, but I don't know if they really understand what that means. So let's take a listen to this episode and hear how I break down generational wealth. And so when you look at generational wealth, which is what we started with, okay? When you look at generational wealth, it's the resources and the knowledge that you're going after, because you could either use them in this lifetime, but more importantly, you could pass them on to the next generation so that they can use them in the next lifetime. And that's true wealth. I've heard someone say being wealthy or having something that is of wealth is to build something that will outlast you. All right. So in that little snippet you heard was just a small piece of that episode, but we really dive deeper into what is generational wealth. And I think it's so important to think about that definition. And that is, can you build something, knowledge, some type of skill or asset that will outlive you? Because in order for it to be generational, it has to last and go down through multiple generations in your family. Whether you have kids or not, it could go down through generations of nieces, nephews. The point is, can you get involved in something, build something, and pass that information down so that it benefits generations to come? And that's what I love about the stock market, is that even if you don't have any money, passing the knowledge down is free. Learning the skill and then passing it down to the next generation so that they can start investing is something that we all can do. We all may not be able to pass down $1 million or $100,000, but we all can pass down the book, the course, the information, and say, hey, this is what I've learned and this is what I've been practicing. And now let's see if the next generation can take the ball and run with it further. And so that's the power of generational wealth. Sometimes we always think about wealth in the form of money, the form of possessions, a car, some jewelry, a watch that you're passing down. But I want to encourage you to think differently about generational wealth and say, what type of knowledge and information can I pass down that will last for decades and years to come, way after I'm gone? And when you think about the stock market was here before me. It'll be here after me. It was here for my grandparents. It'll probably be here for your kids. And so when you think about investing in that information, investing and learning that industry, there's never a time where you could either spend money or time learning that industry and say it was a waste of money and time. Because if you are a good steward of that information and you pass it to your wife, your husband, you pass it down to your kids, you start teaching them how to open a brokerage account, how to buy their first stock. You start buying them their first stock for their birthday and versus buying them their first toy that they're not going to play with in 6 months. You start to light a fire in them that they didn't even know was burning, that will help them out for years to come. And they'll be so glad that you passed generational knowledge down. And maybe that's what we should call it. Instead of generational wealth, passing down generational knowledge that'll continue to help the other generations to come. So that's episode 59. Take a listen to that. So it's been fun. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you for episode 100 and to do something different, which is look back on some of the top episodes. We have many more, but those are a few that we wanted to pull out and say, if you haven't listened to those, or if you haven't listened to those in a while, go back, take a listen to those episodes. Let me know if it hits you different now from when you listened to it the first time, because you're at a different point in your life. And if you've never listened to them before, I'd love to know how that episode impacted you, how it helped you, look at things differently, and how it helped you move past fear. Think about generational wealth, the skills needed to be a stock trader or an investor, move past your limiting beliefs, understand an investor's mindset versus a consumer's mindset. I'd love to know how all of this impacted you. So let me know in the comments, depending on where you're watching, or also, leave us a review if you haven't. 100 episodes. I'd love to know. Leave us an honest rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, wherever you listen to this, on YouTube. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I'm out, and I'm excited to bring you 100 more episodes. And I'm signing off saying, remember, you never go broke taking a profit.